All right, let's go ahead and get started on looking at the different parts of the alimentary canal. Now, if you remember from the first video, the alimentary canal is the set of organs that form basically one long tube from mouth to anus, and that's where the food actually passes through as it starts on its way through your digestive system. So, here we go. If I can get it to move. There we go. The journey begins. Dun dun dun. Well, the journey begins always in your mouth under normal circumstances. If you were in the hospital and for some reason you were not able to take nutrition through your mouth, through eating, you might have a feeding tube inserted. But on a normal day, if you're having dinner around the table with the family, or if you're eating lunch in the cafeteria, grabbing a protein bar for snack before practice, it's going to go in through your mouth. We are not plants. We can't just, lay out in the sun and go, photosynthesis, although that would be cool. And we can't just jump in a bathtub full of pudding and go, oh, that pudding tastes so good. We've got to actually put it in our mouth. And of course, your mouth is the place where your tongue and teeth work to grind food into smaller places, which is the example of mechanical digestion that we talked about in the first video. And don't give your lips and your cheeks, don't dismiss them, because think about what would happen if you were chewing food and you didn't have cheeks, and as you're chewing and the food would just dribble out of your sides of your mouth. So cheeks are important too, lips are important too. But tongue and teeth grind the food into smaller pieces. That is mechanical digestion. And then also around your mouth, you have 3 sets of salivary glands that help to produce saliva to start chemical digestion. Now, you probably know that saliva is mostly water, and that does help to moisten the food, make it easier to swallow, easier to get down into your stomach. But the saliva also produces, or it contains, digestive enzymes, and the main enzyme that is in saliva is called amylase. Now, whenever you see ASE at the end of a science word, that's a pretty good indicator that it's going to be an enzyme. So amylase is an enzyme in your saliva that starts breaking down carbohydrates. And we talked about carbohydrates in the first video. Specifically, it breaks down amylose. Anytime you see OSE, that's a sign that it's a carbohydrate. So sucrose, glucose, fructose, cellulose, those are all carbohydrates. So amylase breaks down amylose. It's very convenient. And then, so that's just starting to break down the carbohydrates. It does not complete carbohydrate digestion. That won't happen till later. But then the next step along the way is the pharynx. Now, I have a pet peeve about this. There are people who like to pronounce it pharynx. It is not pharynx. It is pharynx. Pharynx. If the word were Lynx, you would call it lynx. That would be like a furry little cat. Well, not so little. It's part of the cat family. So if Lynx is lynx, Pharynx is pharynx. Pharynx. Okay, I'm done with my pet peeve. So the pharynx is what we typically call our throat. It's the space at the back of your mouth that connects your nasal cavity and your oral cavity. Nasal cavity being your nose, oral cavity being your mouth. And you probably know that your nasal cavity and oral cavity are connected, because if you've ever been in the middle of taking a drink and somebody makes you laugh and you have water or milk or pop come out through your nose because you're laughing as you're taking a drink, that would be an example of, showing how the oral cavity and the nasal cavity are connected by the pharynx. Or if you've ever, this is a gross one, I got to remember, lots of fun facts that not necessarily all of them are good for around the dinner table. If you are throwing up, you're vomiting, sometimes the vomit will come out your nose because it can go through the pharynx and up through your nasal cavity. So, but that's gross. Let's stop talking about that. So in your pharynx, there is no digestive action whatsoever, chemical or mechanical. So in your mouth, there is both chemical through the action of the amylase in your saliva, and there is mechanical from chewing. So food goes in your mouth, through your pharynx, and it goes through your pharynx as you're swallowing, and into your esophagus. Now, your esophagus is the next part um, of the alimentary canal where your food goes from what we call our throat, the pharynx, all the way down to your stomach. And there are muscles. They would be smooth muscles because they are involuntary and they only have one nucleus per cell, and they are unconscious. You don't think about having to move food down your esophagus when you're eating lunch. So these muscles in your esophagus, they will, the muscles at the top of your esophagus will squeeze, and that'll force food down a little bit further. And then the next set of muscles will squeeze, and that'll force food down a little bit further. And then the next set of muscles will squeeze, and that's how food gets all the way from your mouth to your esophagus. Now, granted, most of the time when you are eating, you are either sitting or you are standing, and so you do get an assist from gravity on this. But if you were to ever try to eat or drink something and you were upside down, like you're hanging off the edge of the couch, and if you did not do this when you were a child, I feel bad for you that you had a very sad childhood. Um, yes, food, it's a lot harder, but food that you eat or drink, if you're upside down hanging off the end of the couch, it still will make it to your stomach because of the action of the esophagus. So let's take a look. One of the other things that I told you that we were going to do the coloring sheet, and I was going to tell you specific colors to use. So let's take a look at this. So starting up here in the mouth region, or the oral cavity. Oral cavity is A. P is the tongue. If you look down here, it's one of the accessory organs. O, those are teeth. We're not going to color the teeth because A, teeth are mostly white to begin with, and B, there's a lot of structures on here that need to get colored. So I'm going to give you the colors to use for this, and I want you to pause the video and do the coloring. So we've got oral cavity, tongue. On your copy of the coloring sheet, you should see that Q, R, and S, there's Q, there's R, and there's S. Those are all different salivary glands, and we're going to color them all the same and just lump them all together. Letter B is the pharynx, and letter C is the esophagus. So make sure that you're coloring the words over here, and also make sure that you are staying in the lines. And I cut off the top of the page where the title is, but I want you to color the title black or gray and stay in the lines for that too. So what we will do, and I don't have a great amount of colors here, so listen to what I'm saying and don't look at what I'm necessarily doing here. So let's start out with the oral cavity. The oral cavity is pretty small, and I'm not a real big fan of, we've got a lot of colors that we need to use here. So we're going to use, for the oral cavity, I'm going to do it in gray because that's the color that I have here. Not that you can see it real well, but the oral cavity, and you should do a better job of coloring than what I'm doing. But the oral cavity, I want you to color it. Stop it. No, not next. I want you to color the oral cavity peach. And I'll see if I can. No, this is not going to work. I'm not going to try and do this. So oral cavity will be peach. Write that down. The tongue, we'll keep with a pretty consistent color for the tongue. Let's do the tongue pink, like regular baby pink. I don't have pink in my arsenal, so we'll color the tongue. I'll do it red, you do it pink. Then for the pharynx, oh, let's do the pharynx. We're going to get really nasty here. Let's do the pharynx. Let's do it light brown. Do I have brown in mine? I do not have brown in mine, but I have black. So the pharynx, see, there's where it's connecting the oral cavity and the nasal cavity. The pharynx, you color it light brown. Don't use dark brown because we're going to save dark brown for something else later on. Yeah, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, it'll just be a surprise. And for the esophagus, oh wait, salivary glands. For the salivary glands, which are down here, and you have on yours that they are Q, R, and S. For the salivary glands, let's do those dark blue. So you're using dark blue for all three of the salivary glands, Q, R, and S. There we go. And your picture should be way better than mine because mine's a disaster. And how about for the esophagus? Let's see. We're going to end up getting really creative with our colors, just so you know. Let's use what on here is called cyan, or if you want to call it aqua, or if you want to call it teal, or if you want to call it blue-green. And if you need to, if you don't have a whole bunch of different colors, if you would like to actually use blue and green, that would be just fine. So, pause the video, do the coloring, and then come back. That's okay. I'll wait for you. All right. We are running out of time already. Well, let's move on, and we'll get as much done as we can. So the stomach, I got a lot to say about the stomach. So you know what? I am going to stop here at the stomach. This program that I'm using only allows me 15 minutes at a time, and I'm already at 12. So I'm going to stop here, and I'll put the stomach on to the next part of the, in the alimentary canal part 2, and we'll go on from there. So I appreciate your patience, and I appreciate your willingness to hang in there with me. And you go ahead and get those parts of the coloring sheet done. Do not go on and do anything further. And I will catch you tomorrow. Have a great day.